Now, into the ticket office of Disneyland.
Oh boy, let's do this.
Don't think the CIA is going to be trying to hack your second-gen iPod.
I didn't think so. There might have been a lot of illegal music on there. I wouldn't doubt it. But, I mean...
You were supposed to bring death to the flagships, not join them.
Google has found a new way to piss me off.
iTunes is a constant source of embarrassment.
Behind-the-scenes camera crap.
Here, tell us about courage, Phil. Tell us about courage.
I am Nadella. I can't do it anymore without laughing. I was going to do the whole thing. Welcome, everyone, to the Calling All Platforms podcast. I am your host, Wes, and I am here with Landon.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Caleb.
I'm really hungry now.
Yeah.
We've been sitting here talking about burgers for like 10 minutes, and I just kind of want a burger.
I mean, hunger is a constant state of being at my house, okay? So I understand that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I tried to say current for some reason, and my mind was like, that's not the word, you idiot. Anywho.
And then your mind made you look like even more of an idiot by...
I know. That's...
And no, that is not getting cut from the podcast.
Well, I wouldn't expect it. That's why I didn't ask. Oh, hey, we have some things to talk about now that all three of us are here.
Yeah.
You know, that happens when one of us has to go somewhere. Have to take care of sick kids. That happens.
Yes.
Hey, let's get into this, shall we? Well, looking at the top of the list here, we have some Apple news we're going to get into. Apple launched some new hardware, and guess what? It's the stupidest pencil ever.
It is.
Caleb, I believe you have some comments on this.
I have so many comments. Okay, so listener, this past week, there was, right up until it actually happened, a whole bunch of conflicting rumors and reports about whether or not Apple was going to launch updated iPads. Okay? It was apparently very confusing on the back end, even to the extent where people were getting conflicting reports from inside of Apple as to whether or not they were going to be launching new iPads just with, basic feature like updates and stuff, or whether those were going to be coming at the first quarter of next year. And instead, we were going to get an updated Apple Pencil. So, turns out we got the Apple Pencil, but it's not an updated Apple Pencil. It's a worse Apple Pencil. It's not even like, it's not a replacement for the first generation Apple Pencil or the second generation Apple Pencil. It is a $79 pencil that is the same shape and almost the same size as the second gen pencil, and it magnetically attaches to the side of all of the newer iPads that have the very square boxy design, but it does not charge via wireless charging the way that the Apple Pencil 2 does. It charges via a USB-C port that is under a sliding cap on the top. Now, to its credit, the cap is attached. It does not come all the way off like the first generation pencil does. So it just slides up to reveal a USB-C port, and you plug in there, and then you plug into the iPad. That's how you pair to the iPad. There's no wireless pairing. And then you can just plug it into a USB-C cable to charge. Okay? Now, at $79, it's cheaper than the first gen Apple Pencil was, which was $100. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, this is a replacement for the first gen Apple Pencil because it just updates the charging to USB-C. Honestly, gives you a better charging solution by quite a bit. Allows you to magnetically attach the thing to the sides of the newer iPads because they've all moved to that new design, which is great. That's compatibility, even if you can't charge wirelessly, right? They're trying to save some money there. But otherwise, yeah, just a replacement. No, it's not a replacement for the first generation Apple Pencil, and I'll tell you why. No pressure sensitivity. Okay? It also lacks the functionality of the second gen Apple Pencil to do the tap to switch tools thing that does at the toward the end of the pencil. And it does have the thing where you can kind of hover just off of the screen on the new iPad Pros and still see your mouse cursor. But it, lacking stuff like pressure sensitivity makes it pretty clear that what this is basically a Logitech crayon that costs a little bit more.
It's an Apple-branded Logitech crayon.
It is an Apple-branded Logitech crayon that costs a little bit more than the Logitech crayon.
Wow.
And as, a person who does art stuff on that's the only reason I use the pencil. The crayon has never appealed to me, right? Pressure sensitivity is pretty important for an accurate, natural feeling drawing experience. For note-taking, doesn't make a difference, right? Pressure sensitivity is not that important for note-taking, and I absolutely understand that as a note-taking tool, then this is great. And certain types of art, if you're really into some very, very cartoony types of art that don't really rely on pressure sensitivity for anything, then yeah, it can be okay for that as well. Okay. But it's just, it's not replacing the first gen Apple Pencil fully. And it's obviously not as featureful as the second gen Apple Pencil. And Apple is still selling both of those. Right? You can still go buy a first gen Apple Pencil or a second gen Apple Pencil or this new one, which costs a little bit less, but is still more than a Logitech crayon. So it's Apple just adding something to their quote unquote Apple Pencil lineup, which is, why is there a lineup for that? Apple, this is the dumbest. Why would you make
They really just need a regular Apple Pencil and an Apple Pencil Pro.
Honestly, this should not be a product category. This should be a product. This should be a single product. There should be an Apple Pencil that's I'm just so frustrated. So anyways, it works with any of the iPads that have a USB-C port on them, which is pretty much any of the new iPads that they're selling, except for the 9th generation iPad. They're still selling that. And it doesn't work with that. And I guess that's the reason why they're keeping the first generation Apple Pencil around. I'll be honest, if they had launched this at the same time as they launched the 10th generation iPad and then stopped selling the first generation pencil, then I would understand it. I would be a little bit bummed that they've gotten rid of the pressure sensitivity, but it would be a cheaper Apple Pencil for people buying the cheaper iPads that all have USB-C ports now. And here's a USB-C pencil. All of that would have made sense, but that's not how they did it, and everything is boneheaded and stupid. And I don't know. My question is, why would they keep their lineup like this? Why is the Apple Pencil a product category now? But I don't think that there's any satisfactory answer to that question. I mean, you guys are welcome to try and prove me wrong.
No, well, okay. It would have made a little more sense had, like you said, if they announced this with the 10th generation iPad, or they announced another new iPad that's lesser than the 10th generation one, that's similar to the 9th generation one, that has the newer design style at the same cheaper price, that worked with this. Because the reason they have this Apple Pencil, at least the only reason I can think of why they would have this more affordable version, is for education, which is why they still have the 9th generation iPad. But the fact that they don't work together makes absolutely no sense. Because if they did work together, okay, that's who this is geared towards. That's great. It still is a dumb product, but it's there's a reason for it. At the moment, there's no reason for it because they didn't make it compatible with the 9th generation iPad, or just upgrade that iPad in some way to make it work. It's dumb.
Yeah, it is. It's really stupid. And I think that it'll be a perfectly fine pencil for taking notes. But my advice to anybody who wants to take notes on their iPad and they're looking at the new Apple Pencil for that purpose, my advice would be buy a crayon.
Mm-hmm.
The Logitech crayon is cheaper. It does exactly the same stuff. And I think it technically still charges off of a lightning cable. Or was that one USB? I can't remember. Point is, it's cheaper. You could probably get a used one at this point for not even that much money. And honestly, actually, if you want an Apple Pencil that will work with pretty much any iPad, that is going to be great for note-taking, but not necessarily super great for art because it doesn't have pressure sensitivity, go buy a knockoff off of AliExpress. I have seen multiple YouTube personalities who have bought those and tested them, and it turns out that actually they're pretty much comparable with the first generation Apple Pencil, except they use USB-C to charge, and they don't have pressure sensitivity. Apple basically just copied the knockoffs of their own gosh darn pencil.
Yeah.
So good job, Apple. I hate it.
So the Logitech Crayon does charge USB-C,
Okay.
and it works with all iPad models 2018 and later.
So
So
that's basically all the iPad Pros except for the very first one. Or wait. No, I guess the first two No. Any second generation iPad Pro or newer, I think. Because the original launched at the very end of 2016, and then the 10.5-inch launched at the very end of 2017. So any iPads 2018 or newer would be the second generation of both of those products, I think. Anyways. Yeah, do that, or buy one of the knockoffs for, from what I recall, literally like $30. They're like $20 to $30. They cost less than, literally $100 less than the second generation Apple Pencil, and they do everything that the Apple Pencil does except pressure sensitivity, which, oh look, that's what Apple's new pencil does. So it's a really, really stupid product. Anywho,
I don't know. I think the only thing, if I were to think of, I mean, this is a lot of slack to give them, but like maybe they just wanted to release this before maybe other stuff that's coming down the line, like get ahead of something. I don't know. But I don't know what they'd bundle it with, or I don't know. But I can't convince you.
Like I said, I think that the Apple Pencil should not be a product line. It should be a product, singular.
Yeah.
Just if you update it, make it better, stop selling the old one, keep the price the same.
Right.
That's what this should be. This should not be. This should be. Anyways, I could rant about this for quite some time. I'm not gonna.
Move on?
I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna rant about something else related to Apple.
Let's do it. Let's look at this next topic. Mark Gurman says new Macs are coming this month.
Now, to be absolutely clear, listener, Mark Gurman has flip-flopped on this topic about 7 times in the past month. So he's not positive. Normally, Mark Gurman is one of the more reliable leakers of Apple stuff, one of the more reliable rumor sources. And his most recent newsletter says that we are going to see new Macs launch this month. Now, take it with a grain of salt, because not even a month ago he was saying we're not seeing any new Macs before the end of the year. What he said was we're not seeing M3 powered Macs before the end of the year. And he said that he was expecting the iMac to skip the M2. We were not going to see a new iMacs until they were launching with the M3, and that wasn't going to be happening until the first or second quarter of next year. So that was what was like his take earlier this month, but now he's saying new Macs. And I'm thinking about this with the updates that Apple has made with M2 Macs so far this year, right? We've had new iPad Airs, we've had updated MacBook Pros, we have new Mac Pro, new Mac Studio, new Mac Mini, all that stuff. The only thing that hasn't really been updated is the iMac, but he did not walk back the idea that the iMac was going to be skipping the M2 and that he's not expecting the M3 until next year, but we are expecting new Macs. And so I'm just bearing in mind that we're not likely to see the M3 at this point. What would Apple have to do with new Macs this month to save the last quarter of their year? Because they've been tanking pretty hard over the past month between all the problems they've been having with the iPhone launch, and then no new iPads, a stupid pencil, nothing else interesting happening on the horizon. Everybody's pretty much bored of Apple right now. What would they have to do with Macs to rescue this? And that's not just a discussion question. It's a genuine question, because I don't have an answer to this.
Normally,
I don't know.
Normally, I would say just release something new, but considering that the only thing that would potentially happen would be upgrading the regular iMac to an M2 processor, to most people, that's not worth it. I mean, the M1 to the M2 was, I mean, it was a jump, but it wasn't significant by any means.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would even do it, because, I mean,
Yeah.
nobody would be upgrading from an M1 to an M2 iMac, because people that buy an iMac don't upgrade their computer that often. And
That's true.
people that haven't bought an iMac yet would be buying one no matter, even if they didn't upgrade it. If they needed one right now, they'd buy one, so it doesn't really matter. So I don't really know.
I did actually just think of one thing. A MacBook. We've got MacBook Pros, we've got MacBook Airs. We do not have a MacBook. If Apple were to release a base MacBook that is thicker than the Air, heavier than the Air, possibly has a unibody made out of plastic instead of metal, that costs starting like $700 and has an M2 in it, and is available in a whole bunch of attractive colors, please. Translucent plastic, orange. Translucent orange plastic. Put a handle on the back of it, Apple. Give me a clamshell G3 iBook, please. But no, like, that's the one thing I can think, that if they were to come out with an actual pants budget-friendly MacBook, then maybe they could pull something out here.
That would definitely benefit them a lot. But I don't think that they're going to go back to plastic on any of their laptop or any of their computers in general, because they haven't done that since, what was it, 2009? Was that the last time they had a plastic MacBook?
I am trying to remember.
It's been a while.
It was like 2009, 2010, I want to say.
Because mine was in 2006, and they still had that version basically for a few years after I bought it.
Well, so yours was the second to last revision of the plastic MacBook.
Right. Because
yours wasn't a full unibody. They did the unibody aluminum chassis just after that. That was like 2007, 2008. They launched those. And then it was in like 2009, I think, or maybe 2010, that they redesigned the plastic ones to do a plastic unibody. And that was the last plastic MacBook that they sold.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Like, they're probably not going to go back to plastic.
What I would love to see is if, like, basically the same idea, not plastic, but add the color options of the iMac to the MacBook, because those color options are really pretty, and they are on aluminum, so it would work. We know it would work. Put that on a laptop. They would have to charge a little more because it's aluminum, but they could charge $800 for it, $900 maybe.
Yeah, well, and that's my thing though, is that they already have a laptop at a $900 price point. You know, like you can get an M1 MacBook Air for that, and you know, like they could launch an M2 MacBook at that price, but just, you know, $100 more gets you the M2 MacBook Air. And the advantage of the Air is that it's really thin and very portable and stuff like that. So I'm trying to think, like, how do they bring the price of the M2 MacBook Air down? And not having to make it so thin would be one way of doing that. But really, there's no reason that it's difficult to make it thin anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Like, now that they're using Apple Silicon, everything is really power efficient and extremely easy to cool. Thin just kind of happens naturally. They put the M2 processor in iPads, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Thin is not a problem. And so to make something cheaper than the MacBook Air, they can't just make it thicker for no reason. That would be dumb, because then it would have more battery life and people would rather have that than the MacBook Air. You know, so it's like, how do they make something that costs less to make than the MacBook Air, but doesn't have the same exclusivity features or feel as the MacBook Air? And the only thing I can think of is decreasing the quality of the chassis itself, making it from a material that is cheaper and not as high quality as the aluminum that they make their computers out of. And yeah, maybe plastic isn't the way to go. That maybe they could do a like a magnesium chassis or something like that, or maybe they move away from the unibody design and have something that's a little bit clunkier and not quite as elegant but easier to manufacture. I don't know. Like that I would say that's probably the kind of thing they would have to do, is introduce an entirely new Mac line. And I think that MacBook is probably the best place to go with that costs less, that is more accessible to like your college students and high school students and stuff like that, that lets them get Apple Silicon in their hands for less money than a MacBook Air. But beyond that, yeah, I don't know. Like it's really interesting to me that this rumor popped up so close to the end of the month too, that Gurman's like, oh, we are going to see some new Macs. It's basically like we have a week and a half for those to materialize from this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And it's not going to be an M3 because they would need an event for an M3, and they haven't sent out invites for that yet. And so
exactly,
it's going to be a press release. So it's going to be something updating to an M2, which the only thing left pretty much is the regular iMac. And if that's the case, do not buy it because they're going to come out with an M3 in freaking March or February. Yep. So it's so I don't understand. It's really strange.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're going to take the Apple Studio display and they're gonna put an iPad in it. Just and that'll be their new. I mean, that's just an iMac. I don't know. I genuinely can't think of anything.
I mean, I wouldn't hate that.
Well, it basically already has an iPad in it.
Yeah, maybe there are also rumors of a 32-inch iMac, more or less Pro, coming out not till the end of next year, though. So,
yes,
that also wouldn't make sense.
I don't know. It is really baffling because, like, what on earth would they be doing with new Macs this month, especially via press release? Because, like, what else needs to be updated to the M2 besides the iMac? And that's like that's the kind of thing that you would see with a press release from Apple, is just, oh, we updated this Mac line to whatever, but everything's on the M2 already. I don't know. Maybe they have the M2 Extreme or something like that ready to go for the Mac Pro,
M2X,
and they'll release that. But I don't know. It just, Apple is looking like they're going to have a pretty crappy holiday quarter for Apple. Like, they're still going to make literally hundreds of billions of dollars, but that'll be low for them. So,
girl, yeah,
good times.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's move on here. We're going to move on to some general tech news that we got. We're going to get into the OnePlus Open.
Yes. So, the OnePlus Open, listener, is their version of a foldable phone. And I like it. Not going to lie. Yeah. So before we get into too many details on why this phone is cool, let's just go over the specs really quick. So it's got a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, so it's current processor. It's the outside display is a 6.3-inch 120 hertz OLED. And it is an LTPO display that goes down to 10 hertz and up to 120 hertz. The inside display is a 7.82-inch display, also an LTPO, 120 hertz down to 1 hertz, I believe, on the inside. And that's pretty nice. It's got 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, a 4,800 milliamp hour battery. It is running Android 13, unfortunately, not Android 14 at the moment. So that's a little bit of a downside. The front camera is they have a 32 megapixel cover screen selfie camera. So the front display has that. The inside camera is a 20 megapixel camera. So not quite as great, but still fine. On the back though, it has a 48 megapixel sensor, a 64 megapixel 3x camera, and a 48 megapixel ultra wide. So decent cameras on the back. It does not have wireless charging, unfortunately, because it's OnePlus and they don't. I don't understand why they just don't do wireless charging. other than they want to push their really fast wire charging, which this does have 67-watt wire charging, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's faster than some laptops.
Yes.
Oh.
And the price on this thing is $1,700. So right in line with what Google and Samsung are doing. It's a little, I believe the Samsung Fold is $1,800, and I think the Pixel Fold is also $1,800. So it's a little $100 cheaper. And they are also offering some really good deals if you pre-order or trade in. You know, right now they're offering a $200 pre-order for if you trade in literally any phone. Working, not working, old school flip phone, doesn't matter. They said any phone. $200 off. So there you go.
Wow.
Or up to $1,000 off if you trade in certain smartphones that are in specific conditions and whatnot. So that's also really good.
Not working.
Huh.
Because I've got some not working phones, and that would be the fastest way for me to get $200 for a not working phone.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I've heard it from multiple blogs and podcasts. They asked OnePlus specifically, you said any phone. They're like, yeah, any phone. So if I set a phone on fire and send it to you, yeah, $200 off.
That's
Okay.
flipping weird.
Okay.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
Wow.
So if you're paying $1,700 for this phone at the moment, you're doing it horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Seriously. Go dig a phone out of a dumpster and mail
Yeah.
it to them.
Yeah.
It's $200 off.
Pretty much. Now, some of the best things about this phone, though, are not inside these specs. So the few best things I like about this, the displays, are both 2800 nits peak brightness. So that beats the Pixel 8 Pro by a significant amount,
Wow.
and any other phone that I can think of as well.
Well, yeah.
And that's not just one display. This is both external and internal displays can hit this peak brightness, which is ridiculous.
That's bright.
That's eye-searing. Like, that's painful to look at. I don't... It's like
imagine that
it's like
turning
a
on at
laser
night.
pointer. I don't know. I'm just...
You go
Like,
and push it
oh,
to be like,
geez.
oh, what time is it? You push it like in the middle of the night. You're like, ugh.
Now, I do have to say it. Usually Caleb does, but I'm going to say it now because it's like one pixel at a time. Like
Yes.
one
Yeah.
pixel at its most bright will hit this, but it's going to be rare. The benefit
This
here
is point
is just
bright.
in general, it's going to be a much brighter and easier to look at display. And from what all the reviews I've seen, it is that.
It also means that if you're watching HDR content, you're going to get really good dynamic range
Yeah.
on the stuff that you're watching, that's the main advantage for it. And given that it is a folding phone and has a really big internal display, watching HDR content on there actually seems like a pretty reasonable use case.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The other really cool thing about this display is for lack of a better term, the form factor. So the Pixel Fold, I've heard a lot of praise for it based on how, like, the shape and size and whatnot. It's a lot of people like it more than the Samsung phone because the Samsung, when it's closed, is really tall and skinny, which is not the best usability for like a normal smart if you're not going to open it up. Whereas the Pixel phone is a lot more usable on its outside display because it's more of like if you go back to like 2014, like those type of phones were a little shorter than the current ones are and fatter. But this one, the outside display is basically, if you were to buy a regular phone right now, it's that same aspect ratio type on the outside display. So that's really nice. So you don't have to change how you would normally use a phone. And it's not that much thicker than some phones. I mean, it's going to be thicker than a lot of them, but there's some phones that are, like when this is closed, it's not ridiculously thick because when it's open, it's pretty thin. And the other really cool thing here is the weight is only 10 grams more than an iPhone 14 Pro or iPhone 14 Pro Max.
okay. I was going to say, wait, then just the normal Pro? That's lighter than the Pro Max.
No, it's only 10 grams more than the 14 Pro Max.
Okay.
Which is crazy. So it's not even that heavy of a phone, especially for a fold. Like for a regular phone, it's not that heavy, but for a folding phone, it's really light.
Yeah, that's like a featherweight.
Yeah. So my question is this now the best folding phone that you can buy? Based on like all of these things. Like I've heard from multiple people that like even like all the reviews, the cameras on this phone is actually really good. It's still not quite to Pixel or Apple level, but it's easily as good as Samsung's and just below Pixel or iPhone, you know? So really good cameras. The experience on it, it's Oxygen OS, so it's a little different than like a Pixel phone, but it's, in my opinion, probably better than a Samsung. But that's subjective. People like their own things. They're also saying 4 years of OS upgrades and 5 years of security upgrades, so that's nice. But I mean, is this the best folding phone?
I'm gonna say no, but only because I like being contrary. No, I think that it depends on what you mean by best. Best overall, like folding phone in terms of functionality and feature set and quality and everything. I think, yeah, like an argument can definitely be made that this is now the gold standard for folding phones.
Looks really good too.
Best folding phone for most people to buy? No, still too expensive for that. And I still think this is the wrong form factor for the vast majority of people. I think that the smaller clamshell type folding phones is probably the better form factor for most people. So it's like, it's the gold standard of the technology. I think that argument, yeah, absolutely can make that. I still think that the smaller ones are going to be just better for the majority of people, but that's not, that they're not the Halo products. This is the Halo product. This is the as good as we can make it. And yeah, I think it probably is about as good as you can make a folding phone right now.
I think I agree with that. Because yeah, I've always been on that same boat. Like the flip form factor is probably the best for most people, like you said.
Yeah.
This is definitely a power user type phone.
Yes.
And that's who has bought them up to this point. But yes, when it comes to the design you're getting, the specs you're getting, all this stuff, this is probably the best folding phone at the moment. Which is interesting, especially as a first generation, well, technically first generation for OnePlus. I mean,
right.
We can talk about Oppo because they're basically the same company. They've had a folding phone for a couple years now. And this is using a lot of that same technology. But for OnePlus, this is technically their first generation folding phone. And they hit it out of the park, I think. This is like the hinge on this thing is excellent. People even say the crease on it is like, it's obviously still you're gonna notice it, but for the most part when you're using it, unless you purposefully swipe your hand over the crease, it's hardly there.
Yeah.
And the internal display is really nice. The brightness again is really good. It's getting a lot of really good reviews so far. So I think this phone is really intriguing. Like the Pixel Fold was probably the first of that form factor that actually enticed me a little bit. I'm like, oh, I could potentially get down with that form factor of a folding phone. But then this one, I'm like, ooh, that's even more tempting because just the fact that the outside display is more, it's the usability on it is basically what I'm used to in a display as of now. Whereas with the Samsung or the Pixel, I'd have to tweak like how I'm using it to an extent. Not a ton, but a little bit. This one, you don't really have to. So it's kind of cool. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good too. So, all right, let's go ahead and let's move on. Why don't we talk about another foldable phone on here that we're in general tech? How about the Moto Razor?
Yes. Now, listener, we've already talked about this phone. This is what most people are referring to as the Moto Razor Minus, because the Moto Razor Plus is the flagship Razor with the really nice outside cover display. This one is the cheaper model. They did announce this at the same time as the Razor Plus. It's just now it's available to purchase.
Yep.
I don't necessarily, I'm not going to go over the specs on this because we've already done that. The biggest thing I wanted to mention here, because we didn't know this before, but the price on this thing is what we were all speculating and wondering, okay, depending on the price, this could be an extremely good value, because the Razor Plus came in at $1,000, which was the first flipping phone to do that.
Yep.
So the fact that that one came in at that price point, we're like, hey, what are they going to do with this one? So MSRP on this thing, this is what Motorola will be selling this at eventually. I say that because it's different at the moment. But right now, they're wanting to sell it $700, which is a really good deal.
That is.
But right now, if you pre-order it, it's $100 off at $600, which makes this phone like ridiculously good deal. I mean, the specs on it, again, aren't high-end, but you're getting this, like, pretty much all the reviews on this one are saying, like, the hinge technology and all that stuff is more or less the same as the Razor Plus, which is really good. The screen's not quite as nice. The battery's not going to be as good. The cameras are definitely not as good. But everything on this phone is okay enough. And for $600, you're getting this high-tech form factor. So my question to you is this going to be the first flip phone or fold phone that actually gets regular people to start buying these phones, this form factor?
So I just said that I didn't feel like the OnePlus Open was the best phone for most people, best foldable for most people. That's the Halo product. That's the state of the technology, right? That's the best you can get in terms of the tech. And the Moto Razor Minus is the best foldable phone for most people to buy. At those prices, like, I don't even care. You get the hinge and the foldable display and all that stuff. The Razor is not like the best foldable out there, but it's been around for a few years. It's been refined several times and it's good, right?
Yep.
It's not going to be amazing, but it is good. And just the fact that it is a foldable is going to blow a lot of people's minds. And in a world where you can get a folding phone for $200 less than the cheapest iPhone.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is the one that gets people to start buying folding phones. I'm, in fact, sitting here because I've had this discussion multiple times over the past month with my wife that she doesn't want a new iPhone. She's not at all interested because she's currently sitting on a 12 mini and she loves that form factor. The only phone she is going to be upgrading to, like, in the foreseeable future is the 13 mini, right? that I've got. The 14 and 15, she could not care less, right? But if I walk up there and I say, guess what? For $200 than a brand new iPhone 15, you can get a phone that is almost half the size of the phone that you currently have, but still has a bigger screen. I genuinely think this might be the phone that gets her to switch away from an iPhone. And she has been quite adamant that, like, I know Apple. I'm familiar with the ecosystem. I know the software. I know the apps. It's all easy. But this form factor may very well get her to switch. And I think Razer has absolutely killed it with just hitting this price point. Like, that's outstanding. Good job. Good job, Motorola. Like, that's it. Yep. Yeah. I don't have really anything else to say. That's just incredible. Good job.
This is the same price as a regular Pixel 8. At $700. And right now, like I said, you can get it for $600. And I've heard on other podcasts that Motorola has done this before, where they will sell the main price at $100 cheaper initially, and it'll go up for a couple weeks, but then it will really quickly drop back down to that $100 price point, or $100 less price point, pretty quick. So,
Man.
this is basically a $600 flip phone.
Yeah.
A smart flip phone. I can't just say a flip phone because,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
it's way better than that.
Oh, man. That's
But yeah.
wild.
I
This
mean,
costs almost the same price as the original iPhone. Like, for context,
Oh.
the original iPhone on contract, back when you were having your phone was subsidized by the cost of your contract, that's when the original iPhone launched, and it was $500 on contract.
yeah.
This is $600 with no contract. Like, that's... What?
Yeah. That's awesome is what that is.
Oh, man. I might be buying a new phone.
I'll have you know, that would be cool to play with, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny because, like, I've seen multiple flipping phones in the wild. Like, I've never actually seen a foldable, like the bigger form factor fold,
Yeah.
but I've
But the
seen,
flip, yeah.
and the first one I saw was a Razor. On vacation, I saw someone with a Razor, like the original Moto Razor flipping phone.
Back when it had the
Yeah.
chin. I
Yes.
love that thing.
And then I work with somebody that has, like, I think the second generation Moto Razor, the one that came out just after that nostalgia one.
Yeah.
So it's more of this same form factor, but just a little older. And I also know somebody with a Samsung, like the Galaxy Flip. So, like, these flipping phones are definitely more popular with regular, like, these are not power users by any means, the people that I saw them
Right.
with.
No.
So it's interesting. And now that this one with this price point, man, it's crazy. So my question for you, Caleb, because we've talked about this before, how you love the form factor that you have with the iPhone mini because it's a
do.
nice small screen.
Love it.
And we've always toyed around with the idea of the Asus Zenfone being your next phone because it's more or less the same idea.
Yeah.
So if theoretically you were to switch because you are just sick of, like, your phone just doesn't work the way you want it to anymore, or you just really want some sort of new feature that isn't on that phone, would you prefer the Asus Zenfone 10 or this Moto Razor for basically the same? I mean, I think they're the same price.
Yeah. Right now they are. I mean, here's the thing. My 13 mini works great. I have zero complaints with it. So I'm not in a position where I'm like, I really need to upgrade. But give me a couple of years, the processor's going to start to feel a little bit slow and I'll be looking for something newer. And if at that point Apple has not done anything like good with their phones, which they have not done anything to impress me with the past two generations of their phones. I'm going to be looking at stuff like this. And if Asus keeps making the Zenfone as good as they have, because that is a full-on flagship with great processor, great specs, great cameras, everything, that just has a small screen and is a very good pocketable one-handed size. If they're still making that, then that is going to always be a contender, because, like, having the smaller screen that I can use the whole thing with one hand is half the reason I like the form factor of the mini iPhones.
Yeah.
The other half of the reason is the pocketability, right? And the foldable flip style phones are more pocketable than anything else could possibly hope to be.
Right.
And so it is really difficult for me to say, would I rather have the Zenfone 10 versus the Moto Razor? Zenfone 10 is a full flagship phone with a small one-handable screen. The Moto Razor is a little bit cut back, but it is so much more pocketable than anything else could possibly hope to be. And they're both really solid price points. That's tough. I don't know. Like, I'm not changing from my 13 mini right now.
Right.
But right now, there's no iPhone on the market that I would switch to. if I were to switch right now, it would be to one of those two Android phones, and I don't know which one I would take. They're both really good.
It's awesome.
Now, here's another little, something to throw into the equation. So down the road, when you do want to upgrade your phone, because it's inevitable, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
If at that point Google has come out with a flip phone style foldable, depending on the price point, because it would be cheaper than the fold, like the regular fold, but it would probably be closer to the $1,000 mark, is my guess. Would you be enticed by that, to have the Google backing, like the hardware, the tensor chip, the OS upgrades that are more likely going to happen? Because that's always big issue with Motorola, is you don't know about software upgrades. Asus is not as big of an issue there, but the different form factor, different price, there's a lot of things to consider there.
Yes. It is, it's really hard to say without being able to compare directly what's available on the market at the time.
Right.
But it is almost like price point matters a lot to me.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that, like, I'm not, I just am unwilling to spend $1,000 or I'm unable to spend $1,000 on a phone. It's more so to the point where, like, I was doing the math the other day and came to the conclusion that if I personally wanted to buy, like, a new, an iPhone 15, the one that I would be getting at the price point I would be getting it at, I would be able to get a brand new M2 Mac Mini and a 9th gen iPad for the same price, pretty much, because I'd have to get the education pricing discount on both of those in order to make it match up. But yeah, I can do that. And in my head, I just had that moment where I was like, $850 is kind of a lot of money. And I was like, I could get a new computer, a new iPad. I would love to have both of those things for that price. Like, why would I spend that much money on a phone? And $800 is the most I have spent on a phone. Like, to be clear, that was what I spent on my 12 mini, I think. No, that was $750. Yeah, $800 I think was what I spent on my XR. But that was the most. Like, my 12 mini was $750. My 13 mini I bought a year after it come out, and I got it used, so it was like $500 or something like that. My 7 Plus I got for, I want to say $650, and then everything before that was even cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's very much like, I think that for me personally, the way that I use a phone, the way that I interact with a phone on a daily basis, the way that I think about it in my sphere of, like, devices that I use, phones are worth about $700 to me. Just flat. All phones across the board. If it costs more than that, I'm like, that's not worth it. You can offer me, like, a phone that literally makes eggs, and doesn't make a difference.
Doesn't make a difference.
If it costs more than $700, it's not worth it. You could literally add any feature to it, does not matter. So that, I think, like, the fact that these are now at $700 or below, that's where suddenly maybe these are worth it now. Like, finally, they have entered into my realm of, like, what I consider valuable in a phone. So yeah, this I would probably, despite the software updates and stuff like that, given that hypothetical situation, I would probably go with the Moto over the Google option. But worth noting that if there is still an Asus Zenfone that is a similar flagship versus the slightly cut down Moto Razor, but still a smaller screen size, then that's still going to be in competition. Because like I said, the size is twofold: pocketability and one-handability. And smaller screen, great one-handability. Folds in half, great pocketability. Which one matters more? I don't know. Like, I haven't had to think about this before. I didn't have options, but now I do.
Options are great. I'm loving
great.
all these options. I'm just loving the fact that there are it's more than just Samsung in the folding market now, making good folding phones. Because, I mean, we had other options back then too, but like the original Moto Razor was all nostalgia. It was not a great phone.
Yeah.
Like the Samsungs have always been top of the tier, or, they're up there. But now with this OnePlus Open, it's a great phone. Oppo's has made really good phones. Huawei has made really good folding phones. The new Moto Razors are awesome. The Pixel Fold is a great folding phone. Like having all of these options is fantastic. And that just does make the price points come down because there's competition, and it's fantastic.
Love it.
That's awesome. Just because I want to weigh in on this, I'd probably go with the Moto Razor. I like it looks cool. Like I with the OnePlus as well. That thing looks slick. I really like that style. But man, that Moto Razor would be. I mean, that thing fits in your pocket very well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny because like I've always said, if I get one of these phones, it's going to be one of the flipping ones, not the fold. Not the bigger ones. But with this OnePlus and the Pixel Fold, those ones have enticed me a little bit. But I'm still more leaning towards the flipping ones because mostly the price point. Like I would probably get the Razor Plus because it's just a better phone overall, and I really like that outside cover display. But these bigger folding phones are getting more intriguing. I'll say that. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Just all around, this market segment is finally kind of solidifying.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to get a lot more interesting now, and that's great. Love to see it.
Well, it's like you said, you've been seeing it more out in the wild. I've been seeing all sorts of different foldables out in the wild too, like with people that are just, I guess you consider casual people that have the phones and stuff. Yeah, I see them all the time more and more. So, yeah, it's hitting.
The one thing that worries me, though, because this market is starting to mature, is when and if Apple gets into this market, because it might not happen, but it also is very high likelihood that it will. Yeah. The problem with that is just is going to make the price go, through the roof, because Apple is not going to charge small prices on their
Apple
phones.
Will not decrease the price of the non-folding iPhones and then, insert the foldable ones into like the Pro slot or anything like that. No, they're just going to start selling the Pro or the foldable for $2,000, and then Samsung and Google and everybody else is going to be like, oh, we can charge that. Okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
Freaking. No, just so long as there are people like Motorola that are willing to keep the prices reasonable on these phones, which, to be clear, while premium phones have gone up a ton in price, you can get really good phones for not a ton of money in lots of different places still. So, like, Apple has made premium phone prices absolutely stupid, but it doesn't mean you have to buy a premium phone. Right? You can still get really great phones for not a ton of money.
I mean, Motorola is an excellent example of that. The thing that has kept them in business is the Moto G, which is a $200 phone that they sell like crazy. Not necessarily in the US, but Brazil specifically, that's like the most popular phone there. A $200 Moto G that does everything you need to find. It's not, nothing on it is great by any means, but it's good enough, especially for $200. It is a great phone. Yeah. And so yes, you can get really good phones for way cheaper than these flagships. It's just, you don't see those advertised.
Right. So just so long as there are companies that are willing to continue the commoditization of the folding form factor, then I think we'll be okay. Yeah. Apple is just going to make it so that the premium ones are priced out of reach of the vast majority of humans. And that's really obnoxious. Mm-hmm. But that is what Apple does. So thanks, guys. Love it.
All right. We'll go ahead and move on. The next topic here. Let's talk about Intel, shall we? 14th gen CPUs.
Yeah. So Intel launched their 14th generation processors. I'm not going to tell you anything about the specs for these processors, other than to note that you can just go look up the specs for the 13th generation processors and then add about 200 megahertz to the boost clock speed, and that's the 14th generation processors. they're the same chips.
That's it, really.
They're the same processors, the same specs. They did shuffle a few things around kind of in the middle of the range, to where like you're what was it? Like they had some lower end i5 that they announced that has like 2 more efficiency cores. And I think they had an i7 that added like or that has the same overall core count, but they moved 2 of the efficiency cores to be performance cores instead. And then, stuff like that. There were a few minor tweaks with that sort of thing, but to be clear, none of the changes that they made were indicative of like a redesign of the processors. All the changes they announced and that they released are pretty much just, we are binning the silicon slightly differently than the previous generation. Just a little bit. We've changed around the specs for them and we're binning them slightly differently. But in terms of like the top tier, high end, 14900K, so on and so forth, yeah, it's just a 13900K with 200 extra megahertz of clock speed. Interestingly, also less efficient. Uses about 200 or uses like 50 watts extra power when running at the new 6 gigahertz boost clock speed, which is like the same as the Intel 13900KS, which was the super, super high end 13900K that had a boost clock speed of 6 gigahertz. That thing looks exactly the same as the 14900K. It's basically the exact same processor, same power usage, same performance metrics, same performance graphs and curves and everything. It's the same processor. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Just have one question. What do we call these new products that aren't actually new?
Intel.
Because I kind of had Intel. There you go. I mean, but that being said, I mean, I kind of had this same moment with the iPhone 14 too. It was basically just the iPhone 13, except more expensive and satellite connectivity, pretty much. And it's like did not feel like a new phone at all. Did not feel like a new product, but they were calling it a new product. So I feel like we need just a general term for these products that a company says is new. They're not new. They're just nothing new.
What was it? What was it called? They used to do like a TikTok. Like you had your first processor. Here's the tick, then the talk,
and then the talk.
Like, and then the talk,
and then they did the talk where they were on the 14th, right? Because it was with Intel, what it was the tick was a new processor node, right? So, they're reducing the size of the transistors, and then the talk was the same processor node but a new processor architecture, right? Where they redesign the design of the chip itself, and then they would go back to a tick, which is the same architecture but a different processor node and then different architecture. And that was the cadence it was supposed to be. Every year was going to be one of those. And then they hit 14th generation or 14 nanometers and just did talk, where they weren't even redesigning the architecture most of those years. So yeah, Intel has done this probably more than most anybody else just because of that. Because AMD at the time was not actually competing with them until they finally released Ryzen. Yeah. But I feel like I want a generic term that I can, and maybe this is homework that we get back to later, think about this, come back with your feedback next week or something like that. And in fact, listener, maybe I throw this out to you. Do you have a good term that we can use for products that a company says are new, but are not actually new? If you come up with any good ideas, send them to us at podcast@callingallplatforms.com, or you can comment on the website or comment on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever. X, whatever frick
Twitter.
Call it
Twitter.
This month.
Just call it Twitter.
Yeah. But yeah, just let us know, because I am genuinely looking for something.
So I do have to give Intel some credit, because this is only because of what my thought process was as Caleb was talking about this chip at the beginning. Because he said it's basically the 13th gen, just add 200 hertz or gigahertz or whatever. and
Megahertz, yeah.
megahertz, whatever it is. What I thought he was going to say, and I was not going to be surprised by this, was just add $200. So the fact that there is some sort of an upgrade to this, actually, that I got to give him credit there, because again, I thought you were going to say $200. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because that wouldn't have shocked me at all.
Yeah, right.
We can give them even a little bit more credit than that, because the launch prices for these are about the same as the 13th gen processors, and they are backwards compatible with 13th generation motherboards. You just need a BIOS update, but that actually I think makes 3 generations that have used the same socket on Intel, which is almost unheard of for them. They pretty much only ever do 2 generations on a single socket, but I think this makes 3 for them now. So it's possible that you could be running a 12th generation Intel CPU in your computer right now, and with a BIOS update to your motherboard, you could drop a 14th gen CPU into it. It's not going to be that much better than the 13th gen processor, but at least they didn't jack up the price. So
yeah.
No, that's an Apple thing where they release the same product 2 years in a row and jack up the price at the same time.
Yeah, 14 Pro versus a 15, same phone.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, jeez. All right. Let's go ahead and let's move on. AMD Threadripper 7000.
Yes. So, not willing to stand idly by and let Intel get off on releasing the same processors again, AMD decided to officially announce new Threadripper products. We were kind of expecting new Threadripper products from AMD. What we were expecting was a repeat of the 5000 series Threadripper stuff, where they didn't actually release any consumer processors. They released the Threadripper Pro processors that were really only ever sold to OEMs and really only ever available in workstations that you were buying from folks like Dell and HP. That's what we were expecting for Threadripper 7000. That's not what we got. There is, in fact, a consumer high-end desktop platform for Threadripper 7000. Now, there are a couple of differences. There is also Threadripper Pro. The normal Threadripper ones start with your 32-core processors and go up from there. Wait, no. They start with the 24-core processor, and then there's the 32-core processor, and then a 64-core processor, which I believe is the same thread configurations and core configuration as the 5000 series Threadripper Pros. Okay? And then Threadripper 7000 Pro is the same for, those 3 tiers, but then they have the Halo one that has 94 cores on it. And
jeez.
198 threads. How does the math on that work? Anyways, 94 times 2. Do that. There's your homework. So yeah, that's kind of how they're going. They have not announced pricing for the Threadripper Pro processors, but they have said that they do plan to sell those outside of OEM integration channels. Right? Wow. So you can buy those in a workstation from Dell or HP, and a few of those, like Lenovo, Dell, I think have already announced server chassis things that are going to use these, and also workstation form factors that are going to use the Threadripper Pro processors. We don't have pricing on what it'll look like, but they said that, yeah, you're going to be able to just buy those processors from AMD, which is great. You can get 94 cores without having to get an Epic CPU. So that's, freaking holy crap. That's a lot of cores. Now, it is worth noting, they did announce pricing for the normal Threadripper 7000 chips. And here's my question. I don't think we really need to go into much more detail on this, because I know the answer that I have for this question. Is there any average consumer use case that you guys can think of that would justify spending $5,000 on a CPU? Just the CPU. Rest of the computer not included.
Right.
Just the processor. Because that's what the top-end Threadripper 7000 costs. The 64 core.
For average, nothing.
$5,000. I cannot think of a single average consumer use case that would even come close to using the horsepower available on a Threadripper. Like,
Yeah,
even
no.
the lowest end 24 core one. I just can't.
No.
And to be clear, the lowest end 24 core Threadripper 7000 is still like, I want to say like $850 or something, or like $1,000 or something like that. It's still really expensive
Still.
for a processor. And it's incredible. Like, this is really great stuff, but basically if you're not doing protein folding on your actual processor, there's no reason to get this. Just don't.
I mean, that's a very expensive bragging rights if that's what you're going
It
for.
really is.
But, man.
I mean, if you're looking to spend $5,000 on any part of your computer, buy a Mac Studio at a $5,000 equivalent, and you'll be able to do anything that you would want to on that computer.
Yep. And that's the whole computer.
Yes.
Honestly, if you're going to buy a $5,000 computer, I would actually recommend some of the higher end MacBook Pros, because you get very similar performance to, well, okay, I guess you don't get the top end processor, but it's portable.
Yes, and it has a screen.
And it has a screen. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, just $5,000 is too much, even for like your average consumer, for pretty much any PC. The only average consumer that I think that could benefit from a $5,000 whole PC, right, would be gamers. Because with gamers, it really is a matter of like, the more money you can throw at your computer, the better your gaming experience is going to be, even if you are a filthy casual, even if all you care about is pretty lights in Cyberpunk or something like that, then yeah, spending $5,000 on a computer is going to get you a box that is really nice to look at and will run Cyberpunk at 4K, like 100 FPS, because you'll have a 4090 in it, and so on and so forth. So like, they're the only people I can think of who I would say, yeah, you can spend $5,000 on the whole PC. But if you're spending $5,000 on any single part of your computer, and you are not like a university laboratory or the Department of Defense or some kind of AI startup or something like that, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
If you yourself are spending that much on any single piece and not your company you work for,
right?
Yes,
Exactly.
You're doing it wrong.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So yeah, that's Threadripper. It's always fun to talk about, but please do not buy these products.
Yeah, unless you can. I don't even know what you do with it. Anyway, we'll move on. We're not talking about it. All right, we're going to get in some gaming. So last week, we had a take on the ABK closing with Landon and I. But Caleb, he was not here for that. So I figured we'd give him the floor. One, Caleb, what is your take on the ABK closing? Your feelings, your thoughts on that. And two, thoughts on Microsoft's, what their next move could be. So go for it.
I think it's just fair to say that, listener, the reason I was not here last week was because I was so excited about the ABK deal finally going through that I decided to go to Disneyland to celebrate. That's why I wasn't here.
That's a reasonable, celebration.
Liar,
Exactly.
you went across the street over to the Irvine Center there to visit Blizzard. That's what you did.
No, I was, about the time that you guys were recording the podcast, we were standing in line at the Rollickin' Roadsters in Cars Land in California Adventure. So
Fair enough.
anyways, that's my thought on it.
That was it.
So happy that's done. My
Oh.
thoughts on what their next step should be is, I did listen to the podcast. I agree with Landon. They should probably not be doing anything right now. I think like maybe let the dust settle for a bit before you do anything, Microsoft. Just deep breath, chill a little bit. Like you just launched Starfield. That's enough, just relax, let it kind of settle out, and then you can start trying to fix ABK. And then maybe once you've made progress on that, then you can start buying more stuff. That's my opinion.
Yeah, which is solid opinion. Let's be real. Oh man. Well, we'll continue on with that thought. So, with what ABK, what Microsoft can do, a lot of people are wondering, hey, what's going on with the ABK stuff, and when are they coming? All that stuff coming to Game Pass. Well, Phil Spencer got onto a podcast. I believe it was the official Xbox podcast. Kind of just pretty much said, hey, look, this is going to take like maybe a year for like the big hitters to really get into Game Pass. So like your Diablo 4s, your Call of Duties, things like that. It's going to take probably a year if they get something to do with Game Pass. So yeah. Now, with that said, the question I have with that is, what ABK games would we like to see go into Game Pass? I thought would be kind of a fun
GoldenEye.
already there.
It is technically. Yeah,
Oh,
It is. It's already there. Actually,
it's rare.
Yep.
No,
Candy Crush. Candy Crush. Candy Crush.
Please no.
Oh gosh.
You could play it on your
ads
Xbox.
for
You could
that
play it on your
already.
PC.
Oh,
You could,
gosh.
it's not just a mobile
is.
game anymore.
It's no longer malware. We own this, and we put it on every Windows machine.
It doesn't change anything.
No,
Microsoft
go-
Works was malware for years. Do you put it on there too?
But Caleb, do you have any thoughts on something you'd like to see from ABK going
So,
into Game Pass or something?
I actually feel kind of reassured by the fact that Phil Spencer is saying that it's going to take at least a year to see some of the heavy hitters land, because I don't care about any of the heavy hitters, frankly. I want to see StarCraft 2 in Game Pass, and I want to see the Diablo 2 remaster. What are they? Diablo 2
Resurrected.
Resurrected. That's what it's called.
That's
Yeah,
what it was.
that one. I want to see those in Game Pass because I have not bought Diablo 2 Resurrected, but I want to play it because Diablo 2 is still the best Diablo game. Don't care what anybody says. Haven't really played very much of Diablo 4, but quite frankly, reviews have not suggested that I'm going to like it more. We'll just say that. And then StarCraft 2, I love StarCraft 2. It's a great game. I have not played Legacy of the Void because I have to pay money to play Legacy of the Void. And I technically haven't finished Heart of the Swarm yet, so I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to play through the campaign of Legacy of the Void until after. I'm not going to buy the campaign for Legacy of the Void until after I've played through the campaign for Heart of the Swarm. So
yeah,
I'm waiting for that. But if they were to put it in Game Pass before I have to pay money for it, that'd be great. So that's where I'm at.
StarCraft 2 would be the one of the game, probably the one game that would maybe push me over the edge to do, the free 30-day trial of Game Pass.
Yeah.
There you
Not
go.
enough to get me to actually pay for it
Right.
after the fact. But if it was there, I'd maybe do the 30-day trial and play StarCraft 2 because I haven't played it yet and I loved StarCraft. So,
Well, and if they put the remaster of StarCraft on there,
oh,
that would be pretty cool too.
that would be awesome
'Cause-
because I only have a physical copy and I don't have anything to
Yeah,
put it into anymore.
Like once again, the original version of StarCraft, so like the non-remastered, that's free to play, right?
Yeah.
Like you can download that
Yep.
and you can play that. They'll let you have that from Battle.net. But if you want the remaster, then you do have to pay for that, and I have not paid for that. So like I have played StarCraft 1 recently, but not the remaster, and I'd like to play the remaster. That seems like it could be fun. So yeah, that'd be another good one. Like, yeah, it's all older Blizzard games. That's what
It
I
is,
want to see
yeah.
on Game Pass, and I feel like that ought to be low-hanging fruit for them. So hopefully that happens like in the next 6 months or so.
I do feel that those would probably be earlier. I do feel they'd be like, hey, by the way, you have Game Pass, link your Battle.net. Oh, look, you can just hop on the launcher and you have it. There you go.
Yeah,
I
that'd be
feel
great.
something like that with all that the older games and things like that. I feel, yeah. With all the IP that they have and they've acquired, I guess I always love the old nostalgia stuff like Hexen. Like it's a mod from Doom. Let's be real, that's what it is.
Pretty much.
But
Lots of
it's
games were back then.
Yeah, so I grew up in that stuff. So all those old modded Quake or Doom engines, I'm always like, yeah, that one or whatnot. So I'd just love to see them all come into Game Pass, and that'd be my take on it. Just Be awesome. And I would be interested to see if they could pull some sort of Age of Empires controller, using a controller for StarCraft. And I just want to see if they can pull it off. I mean,
No. They're
I
just
really
gonna
want to see it.
They're just going to do a straight port of the N64
Oh,
version
gross.
of StarCraft onto Xbox.
Oh,
You can have that.
gross.
Yes.
They're going to have an
gross.
emulator for that center stick.
No, they'll put that
your
on the
controller.
Switch, actually.
They'll
do
yes.
that. They'll put
There
it
you
on the
go.
Switch.
Oh, that was such a terrible way to play that game.
Okay, we're going to move on here. So we have some corrections from last week that Caleb wants to talk about on our PS5 Slim.
Yes.
We have some corrections.
I just minor clarifications. I did listen to last week's podcast, as I said. And when you guys were talking about the PS5 Slim, I just want to make sure, listener, you understood that when Wes said that, like, you can buy the thing for $500, and then he said immediately afterwards, the old one for $500, the disk drive was included. And to be clear, the new one, it is also included. If you buy the new one for $500, you get a disk drive.
Yes.
The way that the pricing is different for the new one versus the old one is that with the old one, if you wanted the fully digital version, you paid $400. Now, if you want the fully digital version, it's $450.
Yes.
So it has gone up in price a little bit on the digital only version, but you can still buy the digital version and then add the disk drive on later, which sounds great until you realize that if you do that, you spend $30 more for the console. So that's dumb. And then you have to buy a separate stand anyways. So yes, pricing is still stupid. It's just a little bit like differently stupid than how it sounded on last week's podcast.
It's a different stupid.
Yes, exactly.
Listener, we were at the beginning of the podcast before we started. All three of us were trying to clarify, like, no, it's this price. No, it's this price. I'm on the website. No, you're not.
It's really, Sony's website is really dumb right now because it's all like, here's our store. Here's the PlayStation 5. You can buy this, and it's the old ones, but they're all marked as unavailable because the new ones are set to launch in like literally a week. And so like their blog post is not on their store, and to get to the blog post that announces the new ones and all those details, you have to go back to the normal website and then go to the news section and then to the blog. It's like 4 layers deep. Anyways,
so
really dumb.
We really clarified it for you.
So I just also wanted to clarify with the SSD, the reason that you only got 825 gigs on the PlayStation 5 was not because they have a giant like 175 gig OS installation. It's because the PS5 has a less than 1 terabyte SSD in it. Yes. Like the OS is 20 gigs or something like that, and it ships with like an 800 and something gig SSD, not a 1 terabyte SSD. That's what the PlayStation 5 has had up to now. So when Sony says that the new one has a 1 terabyte SSD, that is actually a pretty significant storage increase over what the original PS5 had, because theoretically that means that you're going to have a quote-unquote 1032 gigabyte SSD, and then 30 gigs of that is going to be taken up by the operating system. Yeah. And then the rest of it, which you will have available to play. So that's almost 200 extra gigs worth of space versus the original PlayStation 5. So,
which is a good thing.
Just wanted to clarify those two things. It's like I said, minor stuff.
That could be where that $50 price increase from the old digital to the new digital comes into play.
I mean,
part of it.
I guess, but also NAND flash is really cheap right now, and SSDs are dropping in price. So
I agree. But
Sony?
I would also say that if Apple were to charge for 200 extra gigs, it's $500.
Yeah, okay, that's
true.
So $50 is actually what they're paying plus a little bit of a markup. So I actually think that's a fair price kind of. I still think they should have just kept it at $400, but it's not outrageous for $50 more for more storage.
I think that if in order to make your pricing strategy look reasonable, you have to compare it to Apple, then your pricing strategy is automatically unreasonable. That's what I think.
Oh, jeez. Sony's they want to be the new Apple. How's that? Or the Apple of gaming. There you go.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey, you want wheels for that console? That's an extra $75.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on. All right. CS2 starts banning people for updating their AMD drivers. I did not hear about this.
Yeah, this one was great. So AMD released new drivers for the Radeon graphics cards that gave their new frame generation technology. I can't remember what they're calling it, but it included that functionality. And the way that works was apparently getting all sorts of unfriendly with the anti-cheat in Counter-Strike 2. And Counter-Strike 2 thought that those people were cheating and started banning them. just for, downloading new drivers for their GPU. A couple of things happened after this happened. AMD pulled the driver update. They're like, wait, no, maybe don't use that one. They did release an update that fixes the problem by removing the frame generation technology from the driver. So that's just not a thing anymore. And Valve has said that Counter-Strike 2 is also going to be getting a patch fairly soon that basically is going to check your driver before it flags you as a cheater. And if you have AMD's like drivers of a specific then it won't flag you. It'll be like, oh, he's not cheating, he's just got the wrong graphics card, basically. So
fair enough.
And so yeah,
wow.
There's a couple of different angles to this. There's the whole AMD Radeon angle, which I'm going to talk about later, but I just wanted to, just as a thought, does anti-cheat actually work well enough to justify stuff like this happening? Because the fact of the matter is, there's still tons of cheaters all over online multiplayer games. Like, right. Anti-cheat, yeah, it catches some of them, but it's like, it's far enough behind that it seems like just about every game you get into at a high level, there's still cheaters all over the place. So, I don't know.
I think it's funny that they're like, God, I wish there was, you would think there would have been some communication or something like, hey, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, Valve is reinstating the accounts of anybody who was banned because of this. Like, they recognize that this is a screw up and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, you weren't actually cheating. Let's take care of this.
Yeah.
But that's a slightly involved process. And in the meantime, these folks are not able to play the game at all. So yeah, not great. Not great.
Yeah. Well, at least they're trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of not great things, Diablo 4 Season 2 launch wasn't very good. Apparently.
No, there was some things that happened. So, Season 2 of Diablo 4, I have not played much of Diablo 4, like I said, listener. Season 2, I don't know what the heck that entails or whatever, but supposedly it does change quite a bit of the game and fixes a lot of problems that people had with the game and introduced some new I don't want to say achievements, but some new ways to progress in the game as you play, basically a new grind mindset so that you don't have to grind as much in order to get stuff and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it launched, significant update. People were excited to play it. They downloaded, they got into it, they started playing, and they were noticing that they were not being rewarded for progress in the game the way that they thought they should. This went on and got progressively worse for about 24 hours before finally Blizzard was like, oh, wait, no, yeah, that's broken. Turns out the game was not recognizing people's progress in the game. Blizzard released a patch to fix that, but it was not retroactive. Yeah. Like, it was not able to give people who had progressed past these certain gates the rewards that they should have gotten for those things. And some of those things ended up getting permanently locked away for those people because they had moved too far past them. They weren't able to go back and redo it. And so there was our options were basically to restart with a level 1 character and grind all the way up to that point before they could get those things. So that was not good. That, they patched it fairly quickly, but there was still a significant portion of the player base that were excited for all of the fixes that they made. They got bit by this.
Yeah.
So yeah. And wonderful thing. This was also the same day that Diablo 4 launched on Steam. Yay.
Yeah.
It's a really, really great first impression for all those Steam users. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, at this point, it seems like a philosophical question, but is Xbox going to be able to fix stuff like this about games like Diablo 4 that are already launched in the Activision Blizzard catalog that have Activision's fingers all over them? Is Xbox going to be able to fix Diablo 4, or are they just going to have to cut their losses and move on to Diablo 5? Like what do we think? Are they going to be able to fix problems with Overwatch 2, or are they just going to kill Overwatch 2 and do something new with it?
I guess I'll take this. I want to think highly. Honestly, I want to think, okay, you now have the Xbox backing. They want Activision Blizzard to succeed, and with Phil Spencer, with the things he's been talking about and things that have been happening, like, it seems like that they would be able to give them the time they need. So, for example, Diablo 4, they don't have to sit there and next season, we got to get this going, got to pump this out. They could actually go back and be like, hey, we're going to take a break for a month or two. We're going to give you a whole season. We're going to give you this because whatever reason, we don't have to sit there and be like, hey, now you got to get this battle pass and that battle pass and this and keep monetizing and this.
Right.
They can just cook. They can keep all that stuff.
Yeah, that's
and
the
then
thing
same with
Overwatch
2. Like, I feel like with Overwatch 2 as well, like, they could actually be like, hey, before we said we're not doing the PvE thing, but guess what? We have new bosses and a whole other team that we've gotten together to do PvE stuff while the PvP stuff is still going with these. Like, I feel like they can really set themselves up and pull away. It's going to be a minute because obviously you have these contracts in place. You have these things already set, but I feel like,
right.
I don't know.
Well,
I want to think highly and say, yeah, I think they could.
You think about it. Like, what is it that made Blizzard games great? And it's the fact
they were ready when they were ready.
It's the fact that it took 15 years for StarCraft 2 to land, Yeah. Like, it's the fact that Blizzard was willing to sit there and bake the thing for a decade or more before they released it,
Yep.
Like, that's what made Blizzard games great. Diablo 3 was just a little bit rushed. And everyone was like, well, hopefully they learned their lesson. And then Overwatch got postponed and postponed and postponed and then finally released. And everyone was like, oh, good. They did learn their lesson, right? But then everything got worse. Everything got Activisioned all over, And they started releasing mobile games and then we got Overwatch 2 and then we got Diablo 4 and I don't know how Warcraft has been doing. I don't pay attention to that.
It's still just a subscription. I think they've added
it's still just Warcraft.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Warcraft was kind of already printing money anyways, so I suppose Activision probably didn't mess with that too much. Yeah. But it just didn't. Activision had all of these ideas about how quickly things should be done and how they should be monetized, and it ran completely counter to everything that Blizzard had done to make great games in the past. Right. And so, yeah, I think that what needs to happen in order for Blizzard to get back to making great games in the future is for them to have the time to cook the game and actually make the thing the way it should be. And I think, you're right, the hope is that Xbox is going to give them that they'll have new bosses, Activision will go away, and Xbox will be like, guys, take your time. Yeah. But I think my concern is that Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 are already so far away from what they should have been that it's gonna make more sense for Blizzard to just kill them and then do something new than it would be to fix them. It just seems like at this point for both of those, a fix is going to require so much time and effort that they're basically making a new game from the ground up.
I guess you can say that about Diablo 3.
Then they kind of did.
They had the auction
Diablo
house
3.
for that. You remember that?
Yeah.
And then they got rid of that, got rid of a lot of stuff, and then just gave us the Reaper of Souls. So they can do it.
Right. They can.
Yeah.
And I think that the problem, the real question is, in order to do that, they have to stop their active, like, breakneck pace of new, like, random battle pass content
Yes.
for both of those games.
Yes.
And if they stop that development and then refocus those resources onto actually making the games good, then they probably can fix them. They release a big patch and an expansion or something like that, and we get a Cyberpunk 2077 situation,
Mhm.
where the game is basically redesigned from the ground up. But in order to do that, they're not going to be able to monetize the games in the meantime. And the player bases for the games are going to fall drastically over time. And, like, Activision obviously never would have allowed that. Xbox might, but I guess it just depends on how much of Activision is baked into Blizzard at this point. Is Blizzard going to be willing to do that? I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
see.
It remains to be seen, but
Yeah. I want to be hopeful. I do.
yeah,
I want to try and be hopeful. I mean,
don't we all?
all we can do is look at what Xbox has done. Let's say it's just since Phil Spencer, what they've been trying to accomplish, what they've proven. I mean, I want to say good things,
And I mean,
yeah, I'm an Xbox fanboy by all means. Yes, I'm on the system. I am there, but I still have to keep in mind that this could all go south.
it could.
So they want to make money. Like, they spent $69 billion to make money.
Yes.
So I have to keep that in mind.
But I think they know that the best way to make money is to make customers happy.
Yes.
Yes. Now, my thoughts on this is it appears that Activision is relying, or has been in the past, relying solely on the popularity of a brand. Because Diablo is a very popular brand.
Yeah.
Everyone,
like, they were the
loved,
trendsetters.
Yes. Everyone loved Diablo 1, Diablo 2. Everyone was fine with Diablo 3, but so they were relying on that brand. And then what's the other game that you were talking about? I can't remember. Overwatch. Like, it took a long time for Overwatch to come out, the first one, and everyone loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we have got to do a new thing with this right away. So
monetize the brand.
Yes, they're taking advantage of a brand that everyone loves, and just like Caleb said, they're not letting it cook long enough in order to just try to make money. Whereas Microsoft has learned you can't rely solely on a brand. Look at Cortana you can't rely solely on a brand, or even Surface for that matter, because Surface, they do make good products, but they know that's not Microsoft's moneymaker, based because just the brand is not enough to pay that much money for the hardware you're getting. So Microsoft, I think, has learned this over the years. It took some time. It took some misses, but they have learned it. So I think that they're not going to rely solely on brands of these games. Like, even with Halo, they've learned it. Like, different games have been hit or miss. So they've taken time with other newer versions of Halo. Okay, we need to not put a new one out every year. We'll take 2 or 3 years to put this next one out. So I think it'll get better, just for the fact that they've learned this problem. They're not as invested in we need to make money right away as where Activision was.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft is making money in other ways. Xbox is making money in other ways. They are okay to delay making tons of money right away, right after this acquisition. They're fine. So
that's fair.
I think that, and when it comes to, like, whether or not they need to just kill these games, I don't know, because I'm not in the gamer side. I don't, it's not that big of a deal. I do think they need to start getting a team developing the next versions of these games, but they could also have maybe a smaller team working on making certain fixes. They obviously probably won't fully fix these games, but they could make them playable. People will actually enjoy playing the game for a while until we can come out with the next version that actually will be worth upgrading to.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. And there have been a number of high-profile instances just recently of games that have really gotten significant, like, major overhauls that have fixed, like, groundbreaking problems.
Yeah.
I hate to keep harping on it, but Cyberpunk 2077
Mm-hmm.
was a terrible game at launch for lots of different reasons, not just all the bugs, but also all the bugs. And, Phantom Liberty, so far, is everything that Cyberpunk 2077 was originally promised to be. And most of the bugs are gone. The gameplay has been completely switched out to be basically a new game, to the extent where they're all like, look, if you have an old save of this game, you can play it, but you have to start out by basically rebuilding your character from scratch.
Yeah.
And then you can keep going from where you were in the story with all of your equipment and whatnot, but all of your equipment is different now. So, like, maybe relook it over the stacks and stuff like that. You got to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible to do that sort of thing. I hope that that's what Blizzard is planning on doing, because as it currently stands, I have zero desire to ever log back into Overwatch again. It's currently not installed on my computer, and I haven't even looked twice at Diablo 4 since launch to actually purchase the thing. So
here's another question I have for you two. So obviously these games, people that are really into them have these problems. Now, my question, and this kind of goes back to the whole Cyberpunk 2077 thing, because people were still playing it, even though it was awful. But and I have to ask this question because I'm not in this world, but does the average gamer, like the casual, I'm going to go play for an hour here and there, a couple times a week maybe, are these games still good enough to where these people are going to play them in the meantime, whereas people like you that really care more about the little bug fixes and all these little things aren't going to play it? So that can still allow these games to bring in some sort of money to justify them keeping the games.
I actually think, and I can't say as much about Diablo 4 because, again, have not really played it much, and based on everything I have seen, the way they've implemented the battle passes and stuff like that, it is just, the grind for Diablo 4 is significantly different than the grind for previous Diablo games. So I can't really speak to it. It's a different style of grind, and I don't know. But Overwatch, I can talk to this, and I think it's fair to say that the people who are not playing Overwatch are the people who are quite casual, who are like, I've got an hour to kill, I want to go play a video game. All of those people who had Overwatch 1, I was one of them, frankly. I never played Overwatch 1 seriously. Those people left when Overwatch 2 came around because any sense of progression you could get as a casual player was ripped away from them. Like, Overwatch 2 requires you to either pay like $40 for a single cosmetic skin or grind for literally tens or 20s of hours, right? Like, it's dozens of hours of play to get a skin or a few different cosmetics or something like that, to say nothing of a new character. Over the course of a season, getting a new character via grind only without spending any money, like 100 hours plus. So they basically made the grind for the new characters and the unlockable cosmetic skins basically impossible. Like it's impossible for casual players to do that. It just can't be done. Especially since a lot of the grind is tied to actually doing well in the game, and casual players, we're not good. Like, we know this. We're terrible. So it's, whereas with Overwatch 1, you could get in there and you could like go to the arcade mode and play like 5 or 6 games and get some new cosmetics. They weren't necessarily great cosmetics, right? It was just the loot box. It was a random assortment of cosmetics. You got like half a dozen voice lines and a new spray. And okay, whatever, but it felt like you were doing something. And every time you went to look at your character gallery, you had the new characters that Blizzard had made because they were given to everybody. And then you would slowly see the number of cosmetics that you had available for those characters go up over time. And then you would have your little gold pieces that you'd have. Those would build up over time. And then the next time there was a seasonal event of some kind, you had a few thousand gold pieces that you could spend on one or two skins that were really nice that you really wanted and stuff like that. Like, the casuals did not progress quickly. And we never, none of us ever got to the point where we had every single cosmetic item in the game the way that the people who were really serious about playing the game did. But you still felt like you were getting something for your time. You were playing, you had fun playing the game. There was the satisfaction of the gameplay itself, and also these nice little cosmetic goodies that just kind of got sprinkled in on top. And Overwatch 2 absolutely ripped all of that away, locked characters behind paywalls or grind sessions that were literally unreachable for the vast majority of Overwatch 1 players, and all of the casual Overwatch 1 players left. Like, I think that's exactly what has happened to Overwatch 2. So, to answer your question specifically for Overwatch 2, no. I don't think that there is enough in Overwatch 2 to keep the casual people engaged with the game while Blizzard fixes it. Their only real option in terms of keeping people engaged with the game is to keep generating the new seasonal content that keeps the hardcore players engaged, because they're the ones that have the time or the willingness to spend money on the game to keep coming back. All the casuals are already gone. So if they stop developing all of that new seasonal content, then all the hardcore players will no longer have anything to reward them, and most of them will take off as well.
Yeah, I remember, to add to that, like, casual. I'd like to say I was probably casuals too. And my favorite time was Halloween. I loved the Junkenstein stuff. I love that stuff. It was so fun. But this new Halloween one, it's a fun little thing. They did a Diablo crossover, which is fun. But to get those skins, you don't earn them. You have to buy them.
And they're like $40 a piece.
Yeah, it's just disappointing, because I as an old school, I guess, Blizzard thing, I always loved the crossovers for games, because I played Warcraft. But how cool is it to have a little Protoss pet follow you in Warcraft? Like, that stuff, I eat that stuff up. And then
you don't eat your pets, Wes.
Yeah, I eat the pets. Like, it's so fun. Like, I love the crossover thing. You have your little Diablo minion somewhere, or Heroes of the Storm. Love that.
It's crossover, the game.
Yeah, exactly. And so seeing that, I just it bums me out, because before, when there was something like a Mercy skin or something, I just would play a couple games during Halloween, and look, poof, I was able to get it, or like Caleb said, buy it, because I've had leftover gold from playing, and it felt so much better.
I can't count how many skins came out in a seasonal thing that I was like, oh, I really want that, but I don't have 3,000 gold. And then I think to myself, you know what? It'll be around again next year, and it'll only cost 1,000 gold then. And I would happily just sit back and wait for a year for those cosmetics to become available again. And then I would pay my 1,000 gold and happy as a clam, like that was the kind of long-term engagement that their previous model fostered. And Overwatch 2 has none of that. Like 0%.
Yep. So I'd have to agree with that. Diablo, on the other hand, like, the only thing which is nice is there is no power increase, if you will, for their pay, like through the battle pass or anything. There's no power increase. I think the thing that, again, crossover. So I saw in Diablo 4, because I've been playing it. I've been enjoying that. It's great for casual. It's not, so when you get to like level 50, like, that's when the certain skill points end. You get into the Paragon and you get to 100. That grind from 50 to 100, like, I haven't got a level 100 character. I don't have that time. Like, don't have that time. But the crossover stuff, it's like you said, it feels bad, because they just released a horse mount that came from Warcraft. It's Arthas's Death Knight horse, Invincible, with the broken blade of Frostmourne on the back in Diablo. I think that's really cool, and it looks cool, but it's $5.
Gosh dang it.
I know. And so the stuff like that I wish was tied to an event to where if you achieve something, like say it was like, hey, beat this dungeon, you and your buddies beat this dungeon within 5 minutes with all these changes and stuff, then it's yours. Then I'm like, sweet. Bragging rights and stuff. But see, I like that idea. And granted, that's old school Blizzard mind. I played a lot of Warcraft. That's what Warcraft was.
Yeah.
But, it just, those little things. But overall, Diablo, it's fine. Diablo 4 it's fine. That's the best I could, you know what I mean? Like, if you want to do the Battle
the
Pass.
best I can say. It's fine.
If you want to do the Battle Pass, it's fine. You do get the cool cosmetics through the Battle Pass when you give them the money. That's what you get, But, I mean, all the other cosmetics and stuff are cool. You still get pretty cool stuff, so. But, it's fine. Which, we're done talking about that, which brings us into the next topic for Diablo 4, actually. So, I thought this was interesting and perfect timing, I guess, on Microsoft's side. You can now, with your Microsoft reward points, buy Diablo 4's, whether it's the premium battle pass, the regular battle pass, or tier skips to the battle pass using your reward points.
Yeah. One thing I will say about this is that given the fact that the most effective way to get Microsoft rewards points is by, making sure you're hitting daily quotas for taking quizzes and doing searches on Bing and that kind of thing. This is literally just another form of grinding to progress in the game. It's just you do it in real life in your browser instead of in the actual game. It's
true. I mean, if you've already got, there's multiple different things. I mean, they've had some game currencies. So like you can buy Sea of Thieves currency. You can actually buy Overwatch currency with your Microsoft rewards. That's been going on for a little while. On top of everything else, like gift cards for all sorts of stuff. But my question is here. I mean, you think it's okay for this to be an alternative to pay for battle passes and in-game currency? Like,
I think that it is probably easier to do this particular grind than it is to do it in the game. And I am all for giving people who don't have a ton of money more options to play fun games. Like, I think that that's great. And it used to be that the solution there was, just games that go on sale or cost less. Yeah. And now it's, you have to grind through Bing searches every day in order to get stuff inside of this game. It's kind of a dumb direction to move, but I'm glad it is an option, if that makes sense. Like, given the other options currently, this could be much worse. So it's better than just being like, no, you have to give us money. Like, it's better than that.
Yeah. No, I overall, I was like, this actually I felt was pretty cool. Because I was like, if I've been playing through Diablo and I'm really enjoying it and I'm almost through the battle pass without buying it, then I'm like, maybe I will get these rewards. Here you go. Here's some Microsoft points and give me the rest of it before the season's over. Sure.
Yeah.
I like that idea. So, and I mean, why not? If there's a cool skin or something you want, there's some Overwatch points, boom, use your points. If they let you.
Yeah.
So Overwatch it's weird. I know we're talking this again. I believe there's 2 different currencies.
Yeah.
It's weird. Anyway. Hopefully, bring this back. I hope Microsoft or Xbox is able to fix that. Help
There's
it
a lot
be
to
better.
Fix.
Yeah.
There's a lot to fix, but hopefully they can.
Pull that out. So, okay, let's go ahead and move on. AMD. They've announced their 7900M mobile GPU.
Yes. So this is actually interesting for a couple of different reasons. I think the first reason is because, at least according to AMD, we don't have any actual third-party testing so far. They are saying that this is actually going to be faster than the RTX 4080 mobile graphics processors. So that would mean that the most powerful GPU you can get in a laptop is, in fact, an AMD GPU. Aside from the portable workstations that pass themselves off as laptops that have full desktop class 4080s in them. There are a couple of those. They don't count because you can't actually carry them outside of a Pelican case, and they cost $60,000, and they're about the thickness of, like, I don't know, a Brandon Sanderson novel. So they're just, those don't count.
Yeah.
Actual laptop GPUs, supposedly the 7900M is more powerful than the 4080. Now, given the driver issues that AMD has been having, I told you we were going to come back to this.
Anti-cheat.
Would you ever go for an AMD GPU in a laptop that you can't change out? Like, that's the thing. AMD GPU in a desktop, I'm much more willing to kind of take a risk on that, because if it all goes horribly wrong, you can just buy a new GPU, put it into the computer, and you haven't wasted all of the money on the rest of the system.
Mm-hmm.
But if you commit to it in a laptop and it doesn't work out, that whole laptop is trash to you. Like, it's a much, much greater risk. And AMD's driver division has had some issues.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's a tough one. I probably would not give it the time, to be honest,
Right.
to get a new laptop.
Like,
I wouldn't.
It's such a bigger risk. Like, I'm all for, despite the driver problems, I'm all for, yes, encourage AMD on the desktop GPUs.
Yeah.
Because we need more competition to NVIDIA. Like, honestly, at this point, buy Intel. Like, just, any competition to NVIDIA
Right?
is great. But on the mobile side, it's a little bit sketchy. It's a little bit sketchier, just because it's the whole computer is gone if the GPU doesn't work out for you.
My recommendation on that would be, if you do want to take the risk, buy it, use it as much as you can within the first couple of weeks, and if you don't like it, you'll know by then. You can still return it and get something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that sucks, though, is that with AMD's drivers, you could end up with a situation where everything seems fine. It's running all of your games great. Everything is absolutely hunky-dory. Counter-Strike 2 releases. It's playing great. You're happy. And then AMD updates the drivers. You've had the laptop for like 6 months to a year or something. Everything has been absolutely perfect. And then suddenly, new drivers, and you are banned from playing Counter-Strike for reasons that do not make sense to anybody. It's so risky. It's so much riskier than GeForce.
That's fair.
Oh, it's rough.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the right answer is for you, listener, but it is worth thinking about.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's go ahead and move on to one of our favorite sections here, Doom News.
Okay. This is a mod to Doom 2. It's called Venturous. And to, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and read the title of the Kotaku article. New Doom mod is basically a badass Indiana Jones game.
Oh, really?
And I'm watching the videos, looking at the imagery.
I'm looking at it right now.
That is what it is. It is an Indiana Jones skinned Doom 2 mod, and I don't really think anything else needs to be said other than, why, thank you, Doom modders. Yes, please.
Oh my gosh, look at this. Are you sure this is Doom 2? Because he was able to look up. Interesting.
That wasn't Doom 2, wasn't it?
No, not being
able to
look
not added
up and
until
down.
later? Yeah, that wasn't in that engine at all, was it? So, I mean, to be clear, Doom 2 is one of the most heavily, with just the Doom engine in general, is one of the most heavily modified code bases in video game history. So there may be more than just the Indiana Jones skin going on to this mod.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But yeah.
That is awesome.
That's so cool. Are you seeing this, Landon?
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Oh, it's so neat. I could sit here and watch this for a minute. That's cool.
So
he actually throws the torch, and then you can pick it back up and throw it again. Oh, yep.
Doom
This
modders,
is good. This is good.
They're the best.
Mm-hmm. I kind of want to get that mod now. That's awesome. All right. That's good news.
Always like to end on a high note.
Oh, it's always a good one. I think we are at the end of the episode, unless Landon has one more thing.
All right, listener. I'm going to say this is not my typical one more thing because this is not gaming news. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. Because I haven't paid that much attention to gaming stuff, but I do want to mention that today, as of recording, is October 22nd. In 2 days from today, it will be 7 years of the Calling All Platforms podcast.
Holy crap.
Oh, wow.
Our first episode was released on October 24th, 2016. And so this is our anniversary episode of our podcast. 7 years. This is episode 277. Obviously, if you do the math, that doesn't quite add up to every week because we've taken weeks off. But
Yes.
yeah, I just wanted to mention 7 years of Calling All Platforms as
Wow.
a podcast.
And Wes does know my name now.
Yes.
It's about time.
That first
know that.
episode.
Dude. Oh, you need to have that in the intro somewhere. Just anytime we do an anniversary episode or something, you need to take something. Just add it. What's your name again?
Good times.
Oh.
Good times.
Listener, we were all hunkered over on a single microphone on that episode.
It was
too.
so bad.
And a laptop.
I mean, if you listen to that first episode, which you can, it is available on this current RSS feed. Not all of them are, but most of them. But that first one is. And I mean, we were sitting in my basement, literally right next to the furnace.
Yep.
Yeah.
With
It was right behind me.
one microphone next to a laptop. Like, the sound is not great. The scenario was not great. It was like, what, the second time you guys had met in person?
Yep.
It was,
Yeah.
it was not necessarily the best way to start a podcast, but we started and we're here now.
Just
It's
kept
7
going.
years.
Yeah. Yep.
Man. It's just crazy to think. Wow. I'm glad you brought that up. 7 years.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
So not your typical one more thing, but I think it's worth it as a one more thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Man. What are we going to do for our 10? If we make it to 10,
Ooh,
we should do something pretty cool.
I don't know.
Podcast will be 10 years old. Well, we'll think on that. Maybe that could be a Patreon thing. Who knows?
Hey.
Maybe finally we'll do a video episode or something. I don't know. Well, listener, that is everything we wanted to talk about this week. If you want to get a hold of us or have us talk about something or anything, you can get a hold of us on our callingallplatforms.com, as well as our social media, any types of those. If you want to see any videos, you can on our YouTube channel, Calling All Platform Games. If, Caleb would update that, but
Yep.
He's got to play games first.
That's true.
come on, Blizzard. Xbox, this is up to you.
That's what we're waiting for.
That's
Come
what
on.
we're waiting for. You know what we ought to do is we ought to get this is what we ought to do. We ought to get him into the Blizzard stuff now so we can get him ranting and raving and clip those and put those in there. Just like, why am I here? Why is this? I think it'd be
Oh man. I could I honestly have not poked around the Overwatch 2 shops and stuff like that. I'm sure I could poke around that for about 10 minutes and then
my
rant
God.
about it for an hour.
You should record your screen and just have your little stick figure guy right there in the corner, just like, what is this?
What is this crap?
Just saying. Anyway, all right, dear listener, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Calling All Platforms is a production of Supporter Sound Studios. To learn more about how you can support the podcast, go to www.patreon.com/callingallplatforms.